guest exclusive podcast right here on the tradcat.org website. Folks, today is September the 10th, 2020. I hope you all are having a very wonderful and blessed day. As always, we continue to keep the programming along here Monday through Saturday, folks. Typically 3 or 4 guests on every day, some of the top names from around the world, from the Catholic side of things, but then also on the secular side of things, we break down the New World Order and all of its various sub-agendas. Please continue to invite your friends, family members, church members to tradcatnight.org. And, folk, we've got a great podcast lined up for you this afternoon with someone who's been frequenting the podcast for quite some time now, at least a half a year or so. Catholic journalist Gerardo Mon joins the program today. And we've got an awful lot of topics to tackle. Gerardo and I were just briefly talking off air here. And there were certain things that I wasn't even aware of that we are going to discuss today in regards to some lewd stuff that Netflix is, well, they've been promoting lewd stuff for a while, but this new piece of information is at least new to me. Maybe perhaps other people have been hearing about it. But in any case, before we get this program going, we've got to get to our sponsors, folks. And again, this in part helps with keeps this apostolate alive, so to speak. It helps me to keep this website going full time. Get over to jacksberry.com. It's a Catholic corporation serving Jesus and Mary with full devotion. Anyone wanting to start their own website, blog post, or any other social media platform, John Dean over at jacksberry.com will sponsor the endeavor as long as it conforms to church teaching. Visit the website, get a t-shirt to help support the cause. Thank you, John, for all that you're doing. Chet Sauer is another friend of the program. She's an accomplished oil painter of realism. Here's the website. I'm going to spell it out for you. ChetSaur.com. So that's ChetSauer.com. She particularly likes to do seascapes, landscapes, figurative paintings, especially portraits. If you want to gift yourself or a loved one of memories, a special spot or event, please consider her artwork, because it's truly something unique, truly something different. Her website has plenty of examples, folks. So please get over there, make contact with Chet, and see if you can make something happen. Now, we have the 3 Days of Darkness kits. As far as I know, it's the most extensive kit out there. Certainly on the starter level. It's all the prayers, sacramentals, and herbs that you are going to need startup-wise for the 3 Days of Darkness. All sacramentals are traditionally blessed. Everything is sold to you at cost, so there's no, I'm not profiting, Kathleen's not profiting off of that, and that's who you're going to want to contact. It's Kathleen L. Loney at gmail.com, and she's going to help design a kit for you and your family members to help keep you spiritually safe during these turbulent times. Quick updated an update from Kathleen I got this past week. She now has fresh purple scapulars, folks, and these are really hard to come by. You probably won't be able to find them at this point outside of my website now, because they're pretty much all sold out. Again, tying in with Marie G. Jeheny, the scapular benediction, we now are selling, I think it's $12.50, which is way below market value. I know when I was first buying them some years ago, they're like around 15 or 20. Mike Berry's Social Reign of ChristTheKing.com, dedicated to the education and promotion of the solution for the Luciferian Judeo-Masonic insanity which is enveloping the world. That's Mike Berry's Social Reign of ChristTheKing.com. And folks, if you want to join me for the sponsorship team, please do email me. I'm running vastly reduced rates over the next month or two in an effort to get more folks involved. So please, a lot of you have got websites, organizations, products, your own apostolate. Please do contact me, and I'll give you the details on that. Let's not forget, folks, September the 19th is our first web conference. Make sure you sign up, tradcatnight.org/web conferences. I typically have it on the main page. We've only got 9 days left to sign up. There's limited online seating available. And what I'd like to do is I'll release some names I think are going to be at the November conference. I've already pre-scheduled for October, which is going to be called Resisting the Satanic World Order. I'm thinking for November 21st conference, we'll call this the Parallel or Counterfeit Church Deception or Vatican Deception, something along those lines. And I have a commit from Father Voigt, Anthony West, Catholic apologist, Paul Stark, and I believe Gerard wants to join the team as well. And then I'm going to try to work in Charles Coulomb, perhaps Monsignor Perez. So it's going to be a huge program November the 21st. And we will definitely be excited to have everyone on, including my upcoming guest right now. Thank you so much, buddy, for joining the program yet again. We've got an awful lot to discuss here. Where would we like to begin? You want to break that news, what's been happening there with Netflix before we get into Macron?
Yeah, well, that's sort of being circulating in the English speaking media online in the last few days, which is a film by a French Senegalese filmmaker which is basically child pornography. It's a film about 11-year-old girls who want to be strippers and porn actresses and things like that. Now, I haven't actually seen any of the clips of it. I deliberately did not want to see it because it's essentially child porn. But I've read,
Do you know the title
critiques
of it?
online. It's called in French "Mignotte," the cuties. And it's essentially it's a French Senegalese woman who made this film. Her name is Mamouna, I think. She's pretty much a non-entity in cinema. She's a young film director, but she's being promoted because, she's Senegalese. So she, there is a kind of a sinister aspect of the exploitation of the fact that she's Senegalese, I think, to sort of get this out there. And of course, being Senegalese, she sort of has a license to break taboos, because that's kind of what the New World Order is about. Black people are now being sort of used as proxy warriors in right across Western culture, and exploited and sort of and manipulated into doing things that elites want. And one of the things they're trying to naturalize and normalize, of course, is sexualization of kids. And this film has now been taken up by Netflix, and so this non-entity Mamouna, whatever her name is now sort of being promoted now in the French press. There's no scandal about this. This is described as inverted commas exploration of this team, a study, and this kind of language that's used. And so it's always an exploration, a study, as if it's it's a serious work of art that explores certain domains and is questioning boundaries and so on. And this is how the whole thing is being introduced into the media. And of course, it sort of helps that she's Senegalese and black, because that then kind of fits it in with the politically correct anti-racist hysteria that we've had, particularly since the lockdown with the riots in America and in Europe. So sort of fits in with that kind of that sort of left liberal agenda. So that's the first thing. And of course, it's not any surprise that this is happening, but it is another step forward by Netflix into the abyss. And it's part of a general trend that we see happening. Another story here, main story today, I think, that people are talking about, particularly in social media in France, is the fact that the French President Emmanuel Macron almost choked on his mask. He actually almost had a seizure. He was in a school wearing his mask, and he was talking to all of his masked students in a French high school, and he started coughing, and he had to take the mask off and then drink some water, and then that didn't work either, and he started coughing again, and he started suffocating. And it kind of got serious. He had to take the mask off, and then he put on another mask, a lighter mask. He had a collection of masks with him. But anyway, it just sort of, it kind of ties in well with what Professor Dessouté said, one of the French, one of the many French experts who are censored by the media here, who said that the masks will, over time lead to major problems with speech, that essentially they will affect the vocal cords, and that they will lead to all kinds of health problems, which of course we know. I mean, lack of oxygen obviously leads to ill health. But it's interesting that this has happened. And it's another example of the absurdity of in Paris now, everybody has to wear a mask inside and outside. So masks on the street. It's very, very warm here right now. So people are wearing masks. I mean, I don't wear a mask. Obviously, I've never worn a mask. If I have to wear it to get into some place, I wear it under my chin as a form of protest. I but I mean, the people I come across all the time, and I've since the lockdown, I really do feel sorry for them. I see people working in supermarkets, and they're basically blocked behind these screens, and then they have to wear masks all day long on long shifts in warm weather, no air condition. I mean,
Mm,
it's awful, the
mm,
conditions that workers are being forced to undergo because of this, and absolutely incredible that the entire left are not just collaborating with it, but pushing it, on the working class, on poor people who
mm.
are the people who have to wear these masks 7, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours a day. The elites don't wear them; they only wear them for photo ops. They only wear them for the camera. But it's the poor, it's the working class and the middle class who have to wear the masks all the time, and their health is going to be seriously
Mm.
compromised. I think after, I mean, even by now, as we go into the winter here, there doesn't seem to be any end to the mask wearing. I mean, it seems to be permanent now. The mask
Yeah.
is forever.
Now, speaking about health here, I'm sure you're paying attention to what's happening here in America. Trump wants to roll out a vaccine by November, which is causing a lot of people to raise their eyebrows. But before we even really get to that level, I want to get your take. Well, I mean, I want to get your take and analysis on that too. But this is just out on Drudge Report. Listen to this. This is right there in the UK. Operation Moonshot, folks. 100 billion euro this is in euros, 100 billion plan that could see the entire UK population tested for coronavirus in just 1 week. So perhaps mandatory COVID testing coming. Can you imagine that? People knocking at your door saying, "Up, it's test time." Any such similar talk in France or other European countries? Gareth?
Well, I'm not, I'm not au fait with every single thing that's been said. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because there's just an awful amount of crazy things that are being said all the time in the
Yes.
mainstream media, and one would go crazy if one spent even a day just listening to them. You have to be very selective
Right.
in
Yeah.
how much COVID mania you can take just to be
COVID mania.
functional.
I love it. Yeah.
So it's sort of I haven't I'm sure that has been suggested. I wouldn't rule it out if it, and I mean in Britain now they've brought in draconian laws. Of course, this started in Australia. In New Zealand, they've brought in quarantines, quarantine centers, essentially concentration camps. I mean, that's what they are. I mean, you'll be
Right.
brought to a
Yeah.
center. You're not allowed to leave, and there is a video of the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinta Ardern, saying that if you refuse to take the test in the quarantine camp, you can't leave the camp. So basically, life imprisonment if you don't take the test. And we know, and experts are saying it here, and experts are saying it in Germany and in America and in everywhere else, that the tests are rubbish. They do not test for anything as such. There's something like up to 80% false positives. The inventor of the test, Carrie Mullis, said that PCR tests couldn't really search for viruses. That I've quoted in several articles. I've quoted German doctors quoting him on that and agreeing with it. It's well known by doctors who are not working for the pharmaceutical mafia that the PCR tests don't work. So if they start imposing the tests, now I've heard sane voices in the media here, but they are a minority, saying that they should only be tests if people are ill and seriously ill, and that there should be a prescription and it should be the normal procedure. Like you're not forced to take HIV tests, you're not forced to get malaria or tests or whatever. You get tests when you're ill, and that could be one of the tests that you would get, which are a normal or rational country would do. But we're not in normal and rational times. So if they're mandating
Mm.
tests in England, they may do the same here. We now have a very, very high degree of conformity in France, more than in Germany. The reason for that, I think, is that because in France, since the lockdown, I would kind of describe it as a controlled opposition. We had we had a professor called Didier Raoult, who's very distinguished, and he was sort of the chief dissident in this, and he had huge following on social media. He was demonized by the press. He was promoting hydroxychloroquine and so on, and and that was fine because it seems hydroxychloroquine is effective for people being admitted into hospital of a certain age with respiratory problems and fever of some sort, and they call that COVID-19. I don't know what it is, but it seems that in many cases this seems to be effective for these types of problems, and so he was promoting that. But in a way, it's sort of he wasn't calling for rebellion. He should have been saying this is much more. He wasn't talking about the political aspect of it, and this is somebody who in a way became the kind of star of the opposition to the COVID hysteria. But he didn't, it certainly in a way it just went nowhere. There haven't been any major demonstrations here in France. And one thing I would give the French elites is that they're absolute masters at manipulation. They do it so well here. I've seen it over and over again. They are, I don't know, I think it's something to do with being very good novelists. They're very good at writing narratives and stories and crafting them. And the manipulation here was really well done. They set up all kinds of false debates and all sorts of cul-de-sacs that would lead people nowhere. And the result is that there was no real mass movement, people out in the street against COVID-19 in France, as far as I can see. Very, very disappointing reaction in this country. In Germany, it was very different. And again, I wrote about that, how German science was in rebellion and has been now for several months. Literally thousands of scientists in Germany have spoken out about this, have written letters, have formed committees. They've even formed political parties. There's a party in Germany called Widerstand, which means resistance to COVID-19. By Bodo Schiffmann, one of the leaders there, Heiko Schöning. There's, I could name hundreds of names in Germany, and that led to the uprising in Berlin, which was the biggest uprising, the biggest mass movement in Europe since the fall of the Berlin Wall. It's a huge,
Yes,
a huge movement. It was over 1 million people, a massive uprising.
David
So
Icke had one
Germany is
too
really
in London.
the nucleus. Germany is really the nucleus now of the European anti-corona mania movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, David Icke had a big one too in London, not quite as big as Berlin. I had him on my program a few days before that London one. Then there's another one scheduled for Denmark. There's a few coming to the United States. I don't think they're going to be quite as big as the one in Berlin. But there's an awful lot of signs of the times news. Now, FEMA camps, yeah, we start talking about that. We start thinking of Australia, New Zealand or whatnot. But how about this one hitting home? I posted this on the website today, tradcatnight.org, in regards to quarantine camps. This, according to technocracy.news, Ohio, get ready for COVID-19 FEMA camps. Don't blame Democrats for Republican Governor Mike DeWine's dystopian partnering with FEMA to set up isolation camps throughout Ohio to fight COVID-19. So here we have a supposed, conservative type. And I think this guy's going to get removed here pretty soon because Ohioans haven't been taking this guy's crap for the last, I don't know what it's been since COVID, but I think he's probably just going to get pulled out. But in any case, it's not abroad. It's here in the United States as well. So I wanted to make that point. I also wanted to get Gerard to comment on this. This was some big news here that I reported upon within this past week. How about the Navy canceling all masses, but still continuing on with other religious services? What does that say? If the Navy no longer wants Catholic masses. And again, most of them are Novus Ordo. I doubt there's any traditionalist masses going on, but I could be wrong. What does that have to say about our armed services, buddy?
Well, it seems that the only masses that are a threat are Catholic masses, and it just seems very obvious that Catholic mass is still a problem. And it is a problem, obviously, for these people. It just, one thing I do see in America, and this is, the Ave Maria in the White House, is that there is I just think that's kind of mind-boggling that there would be the Ave Maria in the White House. America is so, we associate it with, the Pilgrims and the Protestants, and it's so anti-Catholic. There seems to be there's something spiritual happening here. And the way I look at Trump and the way I look at sort of the pro-Trump movement is I think that you kind of need to look at it in two levels. On the kind of mundane, temporal level, this is a huckster and a schmuck and a casino owner who's sort of leading this country. We don't know how really sincere he is. We don't know. He's not a man of faith, and so on and so forth. And the people around him, there's a lot of people there. I mean, we don't really know how sincere they are either. But I do think that there's just something kind of world historical happening. I mean, that you have, a hymn to Our Lady in the White House, like that is a sign of, that something very fundamental is happening in the world, and that, this really is about the American election is not the American election. It really is a sort of it's almost like it's we're entering a crucial period where the fate of the world is going to be decided, regardless of who the good and bad guys are in politics. That it's sort of it's just highly significant that we now have this situation where we have Vigano endorsing Trump. We have the Ave Maria in the White House. It's sort of it's come down to and this sort of reemergence of Catholicism, obviously, in the United States more so than Europe. There's been huge, as you know yourself, revival of traditional Catholicism. And it just seems to me that all the really intelligent media in the United States, the people who really understand the New World Order, are Catholics. And there's sort of the truth. Eventually, the truth will set us free, and in the sense that there's sort of a convergence of forces there that's taking place in America, and the resurgence of traditional Catholicism, and it's quite extraordinary to see that. On the subject of Catholicism in Europe, of course, we have here it's sort of how would you describe it? We're in a kind of a darker situation in the sense that we're under a regime, a European Union, which is overtly anti-Christian. And so even a lot of nationalist parties are anti-Christian in Europe. They don't even pretend to be Christian, including Marine Le Pen, who is pro-abortion. We had an episode here in Lyon recently where the mayor of Lyon, who was invited to a major Catholic festival, which is basically they bring an offering to the church in Lyon to commemorate the 1643 plague, where they made an offering to Our Lady to stop the plague, and this has sort of been a tradition ever since to go there, and the sort of people from the municipality are invited. It has sort of become a Catholic festival, and this year the mayor of Lyon refused to go because he did not want to. His excuse was that he's secular, and this would be a violation of secularism, and so he refused to go. It was the first time that apparently in centuries that a mayor of Lyon refused to go to this festival. And the next day, basically, he laid the first stone of a mosque in the city. This is, this is, very telling about. And of course, he's a member of the Ecologist Party, and so this is kind of what Europe is very much run by the ecologist mafia. The sort of in-your-face double standards, and inviting mosques in, but trying to ban Catholicism as much as possible. This is sort of now. Interestingly, I read an article in the press there in the local press about this, and where they said that this sort of breaks the tradition in Lyon, where Catholics and Freemasons come together in the local church to commemorate this 1643 petition to Our Lady. And I thought that was funny, Freemasons and Catholics coming together in a Catholic church. It sort of tells you that the church has been in a bad way for a very long time here. It's like you don't invite Freemasons into a Catholic church.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and then on top of this, did you see this one? Francis has got a new encyclical coming out on October the 3rd in Assisi, again, kind of keeping a line the whole one world religion, false Masonic ecumenism thing, entitled "All Brothers," entitled, well, Fratelli Tutti, I guess that's in Italian. All brothers. It's going to be on how we're all just interconnected. It's going to be like a lot of New Age babble, but it's obviously very heretical. The whole human family has to come together, and we all got to get along in John Lennon fashion. So that propaganda keeps moving along there.
But I think that, I saw another piece with Francis where he gave a speech, and then he was seen putting his mask on
put on his
in
mask
his
late.
car for a photo
He
shot.
forgot. Yeah, he forgot.
It just gets more and more ridiculous all
Now
the time.
get this, Gerard. I had a few people emailing me saying that some of the local priests in their own diocese here in the United States were telling people that Francis's teaching on massive vaccines was actually binding. And I about laughed myself to death that afternoon, but I had to address it via an article. But this is where we're at. I mean, it's just anything goes in the Novus Ordo. But
sure. I mean, I think with the vaccine, with I've been looking at sort of the effects of all this, because if you look at the way the elites run, the way they keep people under control is through perception management. That's a Pentagon term, perception management, and the huge part of the perception management in Europe is now anti-Trump, anti-Putin. So they're sort of the bad guys. And I mean, I saw an article in the Irish Times saying Trump was a threat to humanity and this kind of stuff. So this sort of seems to be this is sort of the way in which they keep people in hypnosis. And with the vaccine issue, I've mentioned this on the social media that, Trump is sort of saying he's got this Operation Warp Speed. They're going to bring in the vaccine. He's got all these crooks from GlaxoSmithKline and everyone else. And he calls them the geniuses and so on. And he says, you're going to have the vaccine, but he has said it's voluntary, or at least he's strongly implied that it's voluntary and that people are not going to want to take it. He's defending the right to bear arms. So, if obviously, at least you guys in America can say, if you did force it, I would fight it out to the death. We can't even say that in Europe. But so it seems to me that, Putin has now brought out a vaccine. The Russians have brought out a vaccine as well. And of course, Putin is another big bad guy in Europe. And, the effect of that was, front page headline in Libération, which is the favorite newspaper of the French government, which is the most approved newspaper of the Macron regime. The front page headline was, a big picture of Putin looking like some James Bond villain with a needle, And so, are you going to take the Putin vaccine? And, the effect of Russia bringing out a vaccine at warp speed, even before the Americans, was sort of raising the question in people's mind that the vaccine, hey, is it safe? Well, let's talk about safety, And had Putin not done that, then that we would not have had that sort of a mass, because that's going to create a sort of consciousness in the public mind that vaccines can be dangerous if they're brought out by the wrong people. At least that, and I'm sort of thinking that it could be the same with Trump if he launches a vaccine as a big thing in October or whatever. The New York Times would have to be against it. They'll have to say this is, they can't praise Trump. So they're going to have to come out and say this is an untested vaccine. So it will inadvertently sort of create a conversation about vaccines that Gates doesn't want to have, and it might open the possibility of a sort of of a consensus developing around about the safety of vaccines, that they're not always safe and they should be tested. I don't know if you saw that conversation or that debate between Robert Kennedy and what is that Jewish guy?
Dershowitz, yeah.
Dershowitz.
Mm-hmm.
Kennedy won hands down. It was very interesting to see sort of Dershowitz sort of concede to Kennedy on this issue, even though he was kind of constitutionally defending, they can't force you, but So I don't know, and I would have more hope for America in spite of the nuttiness of
Yeah.
a lot of what's happening there. I would have more faith in the fact that you have still in God we trust as the basis of the system. We don't have that here, and that you have the right to bear arms, which is, you know, it's at least something. At least we can
Right.
fight to the death. Here we just can't even do that. You know,
Yeah.
it's in
No.
Europe. It's scarier, man. It's like things are going really, really, really crazy here.
And since we last talked, buddy, we've got an awful lot happening on the geopolitical front. Let's talk some of the latest here. We got the Greek-Turkey tensions, of course, the situation transpiring in Belarus. On top of that, Iran, Russia, China military drills. I reported upon this last week, as a lot of people did. Russia up there in Antarctica doing some drills. A couple subs were seen out in the Bering Sea. Again, it's in Catholic prophecy that Russia does attack the United States. I always have to point that out to folks. I know a lot of people want to whitewash that, and seemingly Russia or China will have a hand in that mix too. I certainly don't want to undermine that. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure if you've been seeing these reports, but there have been some alternative writers talking about how Chinese troops have been seen on the border, the Canadian border between Canada and the U.S. And I've
Well,
had other. Go ahead.
sorry to interrupt you, but just on that, it just struck me what you were saying there, and I remember, Igor Panarin was a Russian geopolitical expert, and he said a very long time ago that America would collapse and that Russia and China would run America. In an emergency situation, China
Mm-hmm.
would take over the East Coast, or sorry, the West Coast. China would take over the West Coast, and Russia would reoccupy Alaska, and that the Russians and the Chinese would sort of run the United States, as part of a global government system. A collapsed America. And so,
Mm-hmm.
that was he was a top Russian expert, and that was his view that, I guess American debt to China, in the fact that even California wants to secede from the U.S. And so that could be, that could happen. I mean, if America did erupt in chaos, if the deep state
Well,
gets what they
we're
want,
well underway now. We're
yeah.
headed towards that.
I mean, I've seen scenes of America and cities, and they look like, Northern Ireland during the Troubles. They look, or Lebanon, or Syria. I mean, it looks already like, I mean, it is already in civil war. So, I mean, the thing about the election is that if Trump wins, I don't see how I mean, he'll win what? It'll still be a country extremely divided.
It's gonna be
You
crazy.
probably have a rebellion, by all the Democrat governors
Hmm?
and
They'll be
Democrat
more angry.
states.
They'll be more
Yeah.
angry. It'll be
So
worse.
so they'll secede. They'll split. They'll split everything down right down the lines, like the police, the army, the military, everything. It seems that the top brass in the military are globalists, people in the Pentagon, the CIA. A lot of the intelligence agencies. So if Trump wins, America's going to be at war, and if the Democrats win, America's going to be at war. It just seems that it's inevitable. I don't see either side backing down. If Biden wins, it's obviously going to be a fraud of some sort, and if Trump wins, the Democrats are not going to accept it.
Well,
So
what about the scenario, buddy? Because I've been asking all of my geopolitical analysts this. What about if no one wins? Okay, we know if Trump wins, right? The left is still going to go Looney Tunes. They're going to go even more Looney Tunes than they are now. If the left wins, you're going to see the Trump people kind of raise up, so to speak. They're not going to be as nutty as the left, but trust me, there's a few nutbaggers out there. I live out in the Ohio Valley area, and there's a lot of rednecks out here that I would
sure.
think are going to cause, they're going to cause a little bit of a stir. Not quite as bad as the left. But what about if craziness happens? There's a stock market crash. We got COVID lockdown part 2, which you and I were talking about briefly off air. That's got to be right around the corner. We got the mail-in votes or whatnot, and our political system just throws up their hands and say, we don't know who won. Can you imagine what our streets are going to look like then?
Yeah,
Fighting over who's the president. I mean, it's going to be nuts.
it is, and I think we're looking like it. It looks like that's what's going to happen, as in the next couple of years, not just in the United States, but throughout the world, in Europe
Hmm,
as well.
good point.
I mean, you look at the craziness of this, I guess it's just the power of mind control. You even see draconian measures being applied in third world countries where they really don't even have the resources to do this, but yet the sort of fear is worldwide now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Now, you got to educate us on this particular doctor. I guess he's the French Dr. Fauci, Dr. Del Fraisi. Before we even get to him, though, what do you think about Fauci and the thesis that he's a Freemason? That has actually been talked about here in the West. I'm not sure if it's as common over where you are in France and Europe, but he's been given an awful lot of Freemasonic and occultic hand signs. If I'm not mistaken, he's got connections with Georgetown, a Jesuit university or whatnot. So there's an awful lot of people saying, "Hey, is this guy a Freemason?" What do you think about our buddy Fauci? And then we'll parlay into talking about Dr. Del Fraisi.
Well, Fauci obviously he's part of the as everybody who studied it knows at this stage that Fauci is part of the deep state in the United States, and very much one of the key figures in the AIDS scandal, which is, again, anybody who has studied that without going to the history of it, is a complete scandal from beginning to end. And I strongly recommend a book by Klaus Kohnlein, German doctor, called Virus Mania, which explains very well the history of that fabrication, and that Fauci was very much part of, and it turned into $1 million industry and pretty much targeted the African continent more than anything else. So that wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, obviously, somebody like that who has been a bureaucrat for so long and been so linked with these criminals, must be part of these powerful networks. Because, from what I know in Europe, in France, it's absolutely imperative to be part of those networks if you want to go up the social ladder into positions of to be a director of a company or to go into politics at a high level. I mean, they pretty much, now the way they control politics here is that a lot of the politicians themselves may not actually be Freemasons here. The Freemasons control society through voluntary associations. So this is I'm going on what they say themselves. I'm going strictly on what they say themselves in interviews that they have with the press to calm the people down, because the press are constantly they spend a lot of their time here just basically talking about conspiracy theories and telling people that there is no conspiracy and don't worry. And so they bring sometimes Freemasons on to kind of talk about what they do. And what they say they do is that they work through voluntary associations. So, clubs and, free associations. And then those associations sort of put projects and put suggestions to the politicians, motions for things to discuss and things to push. And Del Fraisi is one of the chief people. Again, it's very classic. 2017, he was one of the key doctors in France pushing for lesbians to be allowed to, to have artificial insemination, to have kids. So very much pushing the gay marriage agenda and, surrogate mothers and, all the craziness that's going on now, using technology to basically have artificial babies. He was again, I no information. I'm not privy to any information that he's a Freemason, but he certainly was. Because the Freemasons admit. I mean, I listened to one of the Grand Masters in France there just recently on the radio saying, yes, we were behind abortion, we were behind gay marriage, we were behind euthanasia. We're very proud of this. So obviously they're behind pretty much everything that he's promoting. And so this is where kind of this stuff, the consensus emerges from those elite policy circles. And that consensus is then taken up by the politicians, who are really just, in most cases, I would say, useful idiots. They really are, people of kind of limited intelligence who just play a very cynical game to get elected and have a very limited understanding of the world. That just seems to be my view of politicians. There may be a few of them. The guys who get to the top are intelligent and they're extremely bright. That Henry Kissinger's, the Jacques Attali in France, these kind of guys, they're like kind of like magicians and wizards, but the rest of them are just numbskulls. They're just idiots. They
Is
really
there
are.
is there a special place in hell for these politicians?
I don't
Often,
know.
can you
And
imagine
I
like
think the
a,
media, the politicians and the media, they're kind of both equally stupid. They display the same lack of the same inability to think, and so there's sort of it's a class. There is hope for stupid people in the COVID-19 world. You've got a good chance of succeeding.
right? Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah, that's the times we live in, right? The new norm, as we've been properly brainwashed. But I'm right there with you, buddy. We know we win in the end. We're going to go through some rough seas, if you will. But the ship of Peter will hit the shoreline. No doubt the triumph of the church, triumph of the Immaculate Sacred Heart will commence. In any case, buddy, what else do we need to get out? I think we pretty much covered everything that we wanted to cover today.
Sure.
If there's anything else, a parting word certainly, but then also we got to do some shameless self promotion time. So let's make sure we do that as well.
That was the only that was probably the only thing I missed was probably Belarus. The last time I spoke to you about that, and that's pretty much fizzled. It's fizzling out. They didn't manage to overthrow the government there in Belarus. That was I think I spoke to you about that last month. And it's still going on now. But a very strong government there. It's unlikely that they'll overthrow it. But to get to my website, it's GOC News, GOC News Gearoid, Gearoid. So if you go to GOC News, Gearoid, that's my website. Please help out. Please donate. Please support. Contact me. Hopefully, I'll see a lot of your community on Zoom, whether as a guest or as a participant or whatever. I hope to. I'm looking forward to seeing those conferences because we really need them.
Yeah. First one's gonna be September the 19th. Sign up, and it's through a program called Webinar. Actually, I had to throw out a big chunk of change actually to order it. So it's a pretty cool program. November the 21st. I'm hoping we can get you on board for that one. And it's going to be another star-studded affair. So we appreciate the time, buddy. And folks, listen, thank you all for tuning in to Tran Cat Night special guest exclusive podcast for this September the 10th, 2020. Until next time, stay safe and God bless.